the Asics Superblast, a shoe that everyone in the running space has fallen in love with in some way. It has gotten a ton of compliments and it has surprised a lot of people, including Asics. And after over 100 miles in this shoe, I can say that it honestly deserves every single one of those compliments. I have made a lot of content about the Asics Superblast. In fact, I think the only shoe I've made more videos about or has appeared in more videos is probably the Nike Vaporfly 3. But they're both really special shoes that deserve all that attention. Now, the Superblast is one of these rare shoes. In fact, I think it's the only one that I can think of that is capable of this, but that you can do everything in with zero compromise. Meaning you can do easy running in it. You can do all of your training for a half or full marathon, including, all of those long runs, all of those faster runs, all that interval work, the tempo runs, the fartlecs, all of it in one shoe, including racing in the shoe. You can race in this shoe and you can use it for speed work. And you can do all of that with no compromises. I can't think of another shoe that would fall into that. I think people will say, well, what about the super trainers? The super trainers are all geared towards slower running. What about the Adidas Boston 12? Well, you're compromising on the daily training aspect of that because you're training in a plated or rotted shoe all the time, and it doesn't have the top end of a race shoe. What about the Puma Deviate Nitro 2? Same problem. You're training in a plated shoe all of the time, and it doesn't have the top end of a true super shoe, though it is a fast shoe. There isn't another shoe like the Asics Superblast that you can do everything in with zero compromises, and additionally, it has the durability to be the single shoe that you do all of that in and then go race. So for example, if you're training for a marathon, you can do all of the marathon build, which is usually a 10, 12, 14 week program with a lot of very different type of running. You can do all of that in the Superblast and then go do your marathon, go race in that shoe in a single pair of shoes because the Superblast is so durable. It's just a no compromise shoe that does everything and does it really well. It truly is a super shoe, and it's a very unique super shoe. And that's right, I think of this as a super shoe, and I kind of treat it as a super shoe. Now, I've said this before in other videos. I'll put a link to all of those videos in the description if you're interested in going through the whole history. But this truly is a super shoe, and it's a very unique super shoe because, again, it's a combination of a couple technologies that are very uniquely Asics, and only really Asics could do it given their technologies, in a package that kind of shouldn't exist because this is a big shoe. Let's be honest. This shoe looks big, feels big on the foot, but it is extremely light. It comes in at 238 grams or 8.4 ounces in the standard US men's size 9 reference size. There is no reason this shoe should be that lightweight. You pick this shoe up and it feels like it's barely there. Given its size, it's kind of strange. And on foot, this shoe actually feels a lot lighter than 238 grams. It really is a remarkable combination of materials, technologies, and approaches from Asics. So what is so magical about this shoe? What sets it apart really from everything else? Well, I think a lot of people are going to say, well, it's all the foam in this shoe. We have 45 mil of foam in the heel, 37 mil of foam in the forefoot with an 8 mil drop. I'm going to say it's not that. It's not the amount of foam that's in this shoe. And frankly, I think Asics could take this shoe and make it legal under the 40 mil stack height, race shoe limit and still maintain the feel of this shoe and frankly probably make this shoe perform even better because they're going to make it even lighter because they're going to be taking some material out of this shoe. What I think is so special about this shoe is the combination of foams in this shoe. Now, we've seen dual foam setup shoes, but never in this configuration. Every brand that does sort of these mixed foam or dual foam shoes typically will do the softer foam under the foot and the firmer foam closer to the ground. Asics does that in reverse. We have FF Turbo, which is Asics's premier racing foam, their super foam, and we have FF Blast Plus in this darker blue or purple band that is Asics's training foam. Now, these two foams have some unique properties that are very unique to Asics. FF Turbo is a super foam. It's a race super foam, but it's a foam that has moderate resiliency, meaning the energy return of it is kind of in the middle. It's not as bouncy as Zoom X, and it's not as firm and spring-like as, say, Lightstrike Pro from Adidas. It's somewhere in between those two. And I think that's an important quality because FF Turbo in the Metaspeed series, for me, can feel a little too harsh. And I think some of that has to do with the carbon fiber plates that Asics uses, which are, to me, too stiff. This shoe doesn't have a carbon fiber plate. It's just all foam in this shoe. But when you combine FF Turbo with FF Blast Plus, now FF Blast Plus is Asics's training foam, which is a very soft foam, very squishy foam, and it can become very mushy once it breaks in. I have a hit or miss record with FF Blast Plus foam, but a lot of people love this foam. But when you combine FF Blast Plus with FF Turbo, the FF Blast Plus mushiness actually works really well because now it's going to smooth out the harshness of FF Turbo, and you get a combination of foams that give you a ride that's very, very smooth, but also very powerful. This shoe is very easy to pick up the pace in and maintain faster paces, maintain marathon or half marathon paces. Like I said, there's no compromise in this shoe. And it doesn't have a carbon fiber plate. That makes it unique. The other thing about this combination of foams is the proportion of foams. Like I said, we've seen dual foam setups, but they're generally kind of a 50-50, or there'll be a little bit of the softer foam underfoot, and then most of the midsole will be a firmer foam. I think Adidas's Boston 12 is a good example. There's kind of an even mix of, Lightstrike Pro and Lightstrike 2.0 in that shoe. The classic Nike Turbos, it's kind of a 50-50 mix of Zoom X and React. This shoe is probably more like an 80-20, even 90-10 mix of like the stiffer foam, the FF Turbo, with very little of the softer, squishier, mushier foam of FF Blast Plus. That combination, we've just never seen anywhere done like this. And I think that's truly what sets this shoe apart. Now, the design brief for this shoe is pretty straightforward, according to Asics. Their Asics Pro and Elite road racers asked for an FF Turbo-based training companion to the Metaspeed series. So this shoe is developed to be the plateless FF Turbo companion to the Metaspeed Sky Plus and Edge Plus. And when Asics first launched this shoe, they were very clear that they never really intended there to be another version of this shoe. I don't think they thought very much of this shoe. I don't think they thought this shoe would take off the way it did, especially the way it took off in 2023. And they were very clear, and this has come up in podcasts and in various articles, that they never intended to have a second version of the shoe. But given how this shoe just snowballed last year, I think we're going to see a really interesting Superblast 2 update, possibly later in 2024, but definitely by 2025. So now that I have over 100 miles on this shoe, how have I been using it? Well, when I first got this shoe towards the late spring, early summer of 2023, I quickly fell in love with it, put a bunch of miles on it, got it over 50 miles, did the 50-mile review. There'll be a link in the description if you want to see that video. And was really enamored with this shoe. I was really impressed with this shoe. By mid to late August, I was entering my marathon build for the New York City Marathon in November. And I went through a period where I was evaluating Asics and Adidas and Nike to see what I was going to race and train in. I kind of always knew it was going to be Nike and the Vaporfly 3, but I was trying out Asics and Adidas rotations too. This was definitely in there. But once I kind of narrowed in on, running and training in Nike shoes for the marathon, I sort of stopped running in anything Asics or Adidas. So I didn't run in this shoe for a long time. Now, if you want to get into the weeds of that whole decision-making process, I'll put a link in the description to the first video of my marathon training series where I really get into the weeds of that. So there's tons of detail there. So I didn't come back to this shoe until I got back to Taiwan after the New York City Marathon in middle of November 2023. But since then, this has been my super shoe. As I said, I see this as a super shoe. Now, I've actively been not running in plated shoes since the New York City Marathon. In fact, the marathon was the last time I ran in a plated shoe. This video is being recorded at the end of January of 2024. I spent most of the fall of 2023 running in a Vaporfly 3. I would say 50 to 60% of my training was in a Vaporfly 3. The rest was in a Pegasus, a little bit in a Vomero. Invincible Run was in there a couple times, but mostly it was Peg and Vaporfly that I was training in. So I spent a lot of time, more time than I want to be running in a plated shoe. So once I got back to Taiwan, I'm not training for anything specifically right now, so I had no reason to be running in a plated shoe, but I still want to do longer runs with faster effort in them. So this has been my go-to shoe for the past maybe 60 miles of doing those faster runs with marathon and half marathon pace in it. And it's been absolutely outstanding, to the point where if I had to go race a half or full marathon, a month from now, I would probably do it in this shoe. I mean, I think ultimately a plated shoe is going to be the better, more optimized, more efficient shoe over a longer run, especially a race. But if I was just going to go out and run a marathon to run a marathon, I'm not going for a PR, this would be probably what I would choose because it is that good. It is that fast. And that is one of the problems with this shoe and why I say this isn't the best daily trainer. This shoe is too easy to go fast in. It's deceptively fast. I can go out for, say, a 20K long run, and I'm going to do it in my aerobic zone. So zone 2, that means about 135 BPM, probably around a 5-minute per kilometer pace, somewhere in that range. It's about 30 seconds, 35 seconds off my marathon pace. I can go do that in this shoe, and before I know it, 5K into that run, I am running faster than my marathon pace, but the effort in my perceived effort is about where it should be for that easy running. This shoe just is deceptively fast. And for easy running, you don't want a shoe that's that deceptively fast where you constantly have to be checking your watch to make sure that you're running slow enough to be in the right zone. This shoe it feels good to run fast. It wants to run fast, and it's so efficient. The turnover in the shoe is so smooth, you just don't notice it. And if you're not on top of it, you're going to be running a lot faster than you mean to, which is going to throw your training way out because you're not going to recover the same. You're going to be putting more effort. Good problems to have, yes. But again, that's why I say if you want a true daily trainer, I think the Nova Blast 4 is probably still the better option now because Asics has put a lot of the DNA of this into the Nova Blast 4, and I think that's freed this shoe up to be something altogether different. One of the things I was worried about with the Superblast was durability. The outsole of the Blast series from Asics has always been a little problematic because there's just not a lot of rubber on it. After about, I would say, 20 to 30 kilometers of my initial runs in the Superblast, I was seeing a lot of wear on the lateral forefoot side of both shoes, but particularly my right shoe. Now, I'm a forefoot striker, and I supinate, so I land on the outer edge of the forefoot, and I'm really harsh on my right foot because I think I scuff it a little bit. It's just a weird biomechanic quirk that I have. But I can say after over 100 miles, I think I'm at about 115, 120 miles in the shoe right now, the wear on the rubber has been exceptionally good, much better than I expected it to be. In fact, if you look at this B-roll, you can see that there is wear, and I am wearing the rubber down, but both the foam and the rubber are holding up very well, and there's still plenty more of life in that outsole. Another factor of durability in this shoe is just the foam in this shoe. Now, FF Turbo is one of those foams that just gets better the more you run in it, but I've never really been able to put a lot of miles into FF Turbo because it's always combined with a carbon fiber plate. And as I've said many times, Asics' carbon fiber plates are just way too stiff. So it always becomes way too harsh for me, and it just destroys my legs after a while. But FF Turbo on its own with no carbon fiber plates, smoothed out by the soft, squishy, or mushy FF Blast Plus, is brilliant. I've taken this shoe on many back-to-back days, Recently, I did a 10 mile or 16K run, followed by the next day of a 20K run, followed by the next day of a 12K run. And the foam felt as fresh in this shoe by day 3 as it did on those first steps of the first run on day 1. It's just a very durable foam, very consistent. And after the first 20 or 30K where the foam sort of molded to my foot, broken a little bit, I got a little bit of softness or flex in this shoe. This foam has been consistent ever since, and I'm up to about 115, 120 miles in this shoe as of the recording of this video. The Superblast truly is a special shoe, and I made a bunch of videos about what I think the future of the Superblast and Superblast 2 is. Link in the description if you're interested. But in summary, I think now that Asics has put so much of the DNA of the Superblast in the Novablast 4 and made the Novablast 4 legitimately the better daily trainer, I think that's freed Asics up to push the Superblast 2 more towards the true race direction. Having a true race-ready, non-plated super shoe, which only Asics really could pull off at this point. And I think only Asics would try. The fact they even put the Superblast out in the first place almost 2 years ago now is kind of remarkable. So I'm curious, I'm excited about the future of the Superblast, and I cannot wait to see what Asics comes out with, maybe later this year, but definitely by 2025 in the Superblast 2. Thank you for making it to the end of the video. If you like this type of content, consider subscribing. You'll see more content from me pop up in your feed. If not, drop a like on this video because it helps this channel continue to grow, which I always appreciate. And with that, I'll catch you in the next one.